Hey guys, Index Music here. We are back to help you guys understand, hopefully a little better, how to use MIDI with C Music Pro. So one thing you want to make sure you're working with is a MIDI sound card or just a regular sound card in general that deals with MIDI. Some don't, but most nowadays do, so you shouldn't have that issue with your sound card. We're just going to show you how to basically set it up using a MIDI sound card, and to replicate that on something like this, which is a little bit more complicated, it's just a matter of finding the same exact input or output on the back of your sound card that we're using on our MIDI adapter here. So first things first, if you have a MIDI keyboard, make sure, I've got a MIDI cable already plugged into my keyboard here, make sure it's MIDI out, because we're sending a signal from the keyboard out to the computer or to our app, C Music Pro. So I've got a yellow cable already plugged into my MIDI out on my keyboard, and I'm just going to make sure it goes into the in on my sound card or my MIDI card. All right. The other step you want to make sure you have is a USB cable that's coming from your computer. That merely is going to go in the USB slot on our sound card. All right. So that's going to light up. There it is. It's getting the power from the computer now. All right, so now that we've got the MIDI card all set up, the next thing to do, which is vital, is to select a MIDI instrument on our little checklist here. So I'm going to choose an instrument. I need to make sure it's a MIDI instrument. Out of all these instruments, I only have two options, and they're down here under MIDI. So I either have MIDI treble or MIDI bass. So I can add MIDI treble. Now I'm ready to go. Now I'm set up so that I can interface my MIDI ready keyboard with C Music Pro. All right. One more step though before we do that is we go to preferences and we make sure that under these MIDI ports here we've got the correct port selected. I used port A in our MIDI card, and I want to make sure port A is selected, not B or not my sound card over there, because we're not using that, right? So just to make sure everything's good to go, if I play my keyboard and this lights up right there, I know my keyboard is interfacing with my computer and C Music Pro in the way I want. Now I don't have my keyboard hooked up to any external speakers, so if I want my computer or C Music Pro to function as my monitor, all I have to do is click here on MIDI Echo on. Now whatever I play on the keyboard will come through the screen and I can hear what I'm actually doing. So now we're really all set to go with regard to a sight reading exercise. So if I open one up and then press record, E. And one thing that's cool about MIDI is that you can see in real time what's happening while you're doing it, and you don't really get that if you're recording a live instrument using the microphone. So that's another advantage that you have over MIDI, is in real time seeing rhythmically and melodically also, obviously, what you're doing, and you can kind of adjust on the fly, right? So another thing worth noting is that you can use the MIDI interface also with rhythm exercises. So if I go to the designer and I click around here till I get rhythmic training, there we go. So we have our treble C always. Otherwise I would have to use the down key on the keyboard to enter in the input of what's happening with regard to the rhythm I see on the screen. But now I can use my MIDI instrument so long as it's treble C. Right? So we still have that real-time feedback as far as when we're a little early or when we're a little late, and whether we get it right or wrong, so long as we're hitting treble C on the keyboard. So you have two options here. You have the down key, the down arrow on your keyboard, or you have treble C on your MIDI instrument. So that's hopefully going to answer all, if not most, of your questions about how to use MIDI, how to interface it properly. So just remember, you've got the right MIDI out on your keyboard selected. You're going through either a sound card or a MIDI card, and then you've got all the preferences in the app selected accordingly.